We hear a lot of perspectives on the Mankind podcast. Inclusion of a guest is not an endorsement of their views, and the opinions expressed here do not always represent the mission or values of the Mankind Project USA.
Looks like the rain has gone.
How often do we as a society judge, blame, persecute those who are struggling and in the throes of addiction? I myself have had my many judgments on those around me, those close to me that have struggled with addictions to porn, with addictions to alcohol, with addictions to drugs. I've oftentimes found myself going, if I could just remove them out of the environment that they're in, if I can just take the needle out of their arm, if I could just put them somewhere where they don't have access to these vices, then they will be fine. But more often than not, why do we see so many people get some of the best treatment and care possible still end up with that needle in their arm, still end up back at the bar, still end up pulling up porn on their phone? You see, there isn't a linear path to healing when it comes to addiction, and we can't address addiction itself. In today's episode, we're going to be interviewing Castro Croy, the founder of the Life Recovery Centers in Denver. And you're going to learn through his story and his experience growing up as a religiously oppressed gay man in a Hispanic household, how his experiences going through seminary school, building his own congregation and coming out, working as a parole officer. I mean, the dude's experience is varied, but with that, it has given him the empathy, the insight, the know-how, and the awareness of how to address those that are experiencing addiction. You're going to find in this episode that we remove the conversation of fixing and trying to fix those that are in the throes of addiction. Instead, we're going to be asking questions of curiosity as to why. Why did they choose this path of addiction? Why did they choose the drugs? Why did they choose the alcohol? You see, addiction is merely a symptom. Needle in the arm, vodka down the throat. It's a symptom of something else. And why I believe Alex and his team's work is so important is because they don't simply look at the symptom. They get to the cause. And more often than not, the cause is trauma. This is a fun episode. This is a deep episode. You may laugh, you may cry. I certainly laughed, and I definitely cried during this interview as we spoke about the healing journey for those experiencing trauma, especially those that experience that trauma at a very young age. So if you or anyone in your life has experienced challenges with addiction, if you or anyone in your life is on their healing journey, trying to move away from these destructive feelings, behaviors that surround addiction, then you're going to love this episode with Castro Croy. Enjoy. G'day and welcome to another episode of the Mankind Podcast, the show where we break the molds of modern manhood to prove there's more than one way to be a man. Now, I've got to call it out. I put my podcast voice on. You can tell it's serious when like the NPR voice comes on. Because before this, it was bing, bang, boom, high energy. All right, cool. Anyway, I'm going to go back to just normal voice. Alex. Okay. Yes. Castro Croy is joining us today. This is the first time. I can't believe it's taken us this long with the podcast to have an expert like Alex come on to talk about addiction and trauma and all how those tie together. Anywho, Alex, mate, take a moment to introduce yourself because we are going to fill this hour, I am sure, very, very quickly with what we're going to cover. Mate, take it away.
Yes. Hi, my name is Castro Croy, and I'm a licensed professional counselor and licensed addiction counselor and an EMDR certified therapist out of Denver, Colorado. I have two treatment agencies here in Denver, in North Glen and in Denver, where we specialize in trauma and addiction. The majority of our clients that come to us have complex compound trauma. they're either court involved or they're trying to recuperate their children because of their addiction. And so they come to Life Recovery Center to deal with the core issue that led to the addiction problems and help reintegrate, reunite families, and recover their life, hence the name of our agency, Life Recovery Centers. And aside from that, I'm also a professor in the graduate and the undergraduate program of Human Services at Metropolitan State University of Denver. And then I do consulting on the side. I do training and consulting for judicial, for doctors, nurses, hospitals on trauma, and professionals, how to take care of yourself as you're managing the trauma or tending to trauma, how to take care of yourself and manage yourself. So in a nutshell, that's who I am.
Mate, broad.
Yes.
I mean, there is, so here's the thing, and I'm going to say this right off the jump before we even do the interview. This is also going to end with an until next time, because there is so much that we can dive into.
Yes.
Something you didn't mention is that you were just in Switzerland, going to the Jung Institute. I mean, so for all the Jung geeks, including myself, this is really cool, because any chance to interview depth psychologists, and you never know what framework we're going to use to frame the conversation, whether it's archetypes, whether it's conscious, unconscious. So very, very cool stuff there as well.
Yes, I just came back from the Jungian Institute. I try to go every 2 years to their winter intensives. And so the first year I went, it just really inspired me and motivated me, teaching me new interventions to how to deal and treat trauma through, and this time I came back with archetypes, how to deal with trauma through archetype and art, and active imagination. And I've been applying that now here at with kids, with juveniles who have a lot of severe trauma, and being able to use this intervention, it's through mirrors and through art, and being able to tap into the inner child and overpass ego and see how my addiction was to numb my pain, and being able to look at themselves and where they hold their pain, and be able to see it through the mirror. Where do you hold it? And they're tapping their chest. I hold it here. Look at that space and allow yourself to feel it there, and just see the transmutation of soul, how they get to tend to themselves as they're seeing themselves, and the energy and the power of how they emote, but there's healing there, and they feel safe in that process. It's powerful interventions that I do with juveniles and with adults. I'm going to be doing it with adults as well.
Well, that's amazing.
I love doing these interventions. And so I try to go every 2 to 3 years to winter intensives, and then come back and train my clinicians on how to apply these to clients. Yeah.
Well, I want to get into your story, Alex, because I grew up, interestingly, I just really enjoyed Dr. Drew. I thought it was so intriguing to see these rock stars that I was, a big fan of their music, and to witness their journeys from addiction to recovery. And one thing I noticed, more often than not, that the facilitators, the guides, the teachers, the therapists, they themselves are addicts, right? They themselves have been through many of the incredible challenges that come with addiction. And so, Alex, let's get into your story, mate, because I know that I believe that where you are in this phase of life, and you shared with me in our pre-interview your story, in my mind, it's the perfect exposure. To be able to have the authority, number one, because that's important, the authority to speak on this, but also the empathy as well. Yes. So, mate, let's start with the beginning, and the mic is yours. Take as long or as little as you like.
Yes. Well, again, my name is my birth name is Jose Alejandro Castro Pinto. I was born in Mexico, and we migrated to the U.S. And when I was 8 months old, and in my so I'm going to take it way back. In my upbringing, I grew up in a very religious home, very religious, where it was very strict, Bible-based, very the denomination was Pentecostal. And so everything was seen out of pleasing the dogma, the religious perspective. And so it was very oppressive, in the sense that I identified as gay as a very very young kid. And because I identified as gay, this was not accepted. This was not, and I knew that. I was very well aware mentally that this was not something that was going to be accepted. We were taught at a very young age that this was a sin. This was, it was taught to us that this was not acceptable, neither as a person, nor in society, nor in church. And so I learned to oppress, hide that part of myself. And I became very mindful of being a doer. Do. You do things to be able to cover up. You do things to be able to get your value, your worth. And so I became a doer. And so as I learned to become a human doer instead of a human being, meaning sit with myself, sit with my emotion. And so whatever you would ask of me, I would do. And so growing up as a student, I was always a great student because this is what you do. I was always a great grandchild because this is what you do.
Wow.
And so there was the template set there, right? This is how you're going to grow and this is what you got to do. And when I started coming into adolescence and starting recognizing who I was, I realized that all of this doing was not congruent or aligning with who I am being. And so the more I started realizing I feel attraction to kids my age, the more I became upset, the more I became depressed, the more I became very anxious. And so I realized at a very young age that I was not okay. I was not right, if you may use air quotations, right, in the sense that I was not following the template that was set before me. And so I couldn't be who I wanted to be because the things I had to do, which fall in love with another person, be with another person of the same sex, is not acceptable and goes against everything I believe I was taught, that I downloaded as my truth and integrated as part of who I am and who I need to be. So I let this external dogma, this external template become my narrative, become my compass on who I needed to be as a human individual. And so when I told my father in high school that I wanted to go to the Art Institute of San Francisco, out of all places, right? I wanted to go to San Francisco. My dad was like, "No, you're not. You're not going to go to San Francisco."
That's where Harvey Milk is from. You can't go.
Exactly. You are not going to go to San Francisco. And I had because of my involvement, I became very involved with children's church. I was a youth leader. I was a musician. I mean, I did everything from the local Bible Institute. I learned the Bible inside out, the Greek words, the Hebrew words, the translation. I mean, when I tell you I went in with the doing, I went in. And I became, I would say at a very young age, I became addicted to working. I started working at 15 years old at IHOP as a waiter, and I was working at IHOP and going to high school. I entered school at 7 a.m, finished at 1:30, went to IHOP, finished around 8 o'clock, came home, did my homework, the same thing for about a good 2 years, and then I got hired.
So
on
you were
bank.
fitting the mold as
The mold.
a good boy.
Exactly.
I'm sure some Mr. Nice Guy, sprinkle that in there as well. Just you're following the cultural and societal scripts.
Exactly.
What a nice little survival mechanism that is.
Yeah, exactly. And it's I was very on top of my money. I was very on top of savings. I got my first car at 15. I got I paid my dad for insurance. I started paying rent to my parents because this is what you do at 17 years old. But in my mind, I was preparing myself to move out too. I needed to start preparing to get away. And so as I started paying rent, I started working. I got a job at a bank as a teller at 18. I started working at a bank, and I started working at I'm sorry, I started working at the bank as an intern, as a high school senior. And then when I graduated at 18, I got the job at the bank and I was working at IHOP. That's when I got awarded a scholarship to go to the Hispanic Institute of Ministry in Dallas, Texas, which is seminary. And so I went to the Spanish branch of ministry out in Dallas Seminary. And I wanted to go to San Francisco, but because of the scholarship, I had to follow the Christian, I had to follow the template. You are Castro. You will, mostly at that time, the maternal side of my family was very, very religious, pastors, ministers. And so I had to follow a line. I had to align to that. And so I did. I went to the seminary. And when I was in seminary, there's one professor, Victor Pagan, Professor Pagan, that he was very soulful in the sense that he saw all the students for who they were. And I remember there was a day that to this day, I would tell you, was the day that it really transformed my mind, my heart, and aligned. In one of the classes, he came in with a guitar. It was a professor that came in with a guitar.
And his last name was Pagan, which is,
I know, right?
It's just fantastic.
Yeah. Danny Pagan, Victor Daniel Pagan, and his name was Pagan, and he was a phenomenal. There's always that one person, one advocate, one mentor. He was mine, and I remember he came in with a guitar, and he said, "Today, we're not going to be ministers. Today, we're not going to be pastors. Today, we're not going to be directors. Today, we are going to be human." And what I mean by that is I want you to sing the song that's in your heart. And I will pick up the rhythm. I'll pick it up. And and it was all in Spanish. And I got to admit, my very first language is Spanish, so that's my native tongue. And so I default to Spanish because it's my emotional language. That's the language that I learned to speak in emotions. And I started singing in Spanish the song that says, "Renew me, renew my heart, renew my mind, renew me." And I felt it. And I remember it was a class of probably like 32, and I just started crying. And because I cried, it allowed the entire class to start crying. And, I get emotional right now, and I honor that because of this professor. He taught me to honor my humanity in spite of the professional role that I'm in. And as I sat there and I sang and he played the guitar, he reminded us, even though he did not understand depth psychology, Jungian, he got it. He was a soulful professor. And he says, in any role, in any profession that you enter, don't forget the human soul. Don't forget the essence, the engine, the fire that keeps us going. And reconnect with this part of yourself. If you can't every day, at least 3 to 4 times a week. That, Brandon, stuck to my head, my heart, my soul. I downloaded that and I integrated that. And from that moment on, I was like, I'm off. There's something off, and I need to check where this is at, because he allowed that space of vulnerability and truth and rawness. He allowed us to lean into the human rawness. It really inspired me to honor that space within myself. And I must have been I was probably like 18, I was 19 years old when that happened. And I realized I want to be a teacher just like him. Number one, in a university setting, I want to be like him because he really inspired all of us in that class. Number two, I want to do my internship with him, his location. And then 3, I want to inspire, and I believe this was healing. And I need to enter in a field of healing. And I did not know. Because of my doing template and oppression, I downloaded a message of scarcity, of I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not enough. And your worth comes based on what you do. And that narrative, that story still sneaks up. As even right here, right now, being human, truthful and all, it still sneaks up. It still haunts. Hey, yeah.
I'm curious. Some of that's could be warrior wounds, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Exactly. I'm curious. Are you aware of the Enneagram?
Oh, yes.
Which
two.
You're a 2. Okay, 2 wing.
2. Right. One.
Interesting, because
One.
my 2 and my 3, and I apologize to the listeners that haven't dove into Enneagram. All I will say to you is check it out. My 2 and 3 are spot on, so they're kind of interchangeable. So when you talk about this doing for self-worth, the 3 in me is like, oh, I know what that means. Like, I get it.
Yeah, and so I go into. So I'm glad you're bringing that up, because I go into perfectionism. I go into, you messed up. You did things wrong. I let ego just drill me. And I go into perfectionist, like you, and this is why you are a failure. And this is why nobody's going to believe in you. And this is why, I go off to the races when it comes to, that's why I say it's when stress kicks in, I go into this mental state of, you are a mess. Nobody's going to believe in you. You're a fraud when people find out the truth. That's my one, and I recognize that one.
So let's go there, because you're going down this path of seminary. Right. In your heart and your soul, you've known for a very long time that you're not heterosexual.
Correct.
How?
So, yes. Yes. So I'm glad you're bringing that up. So then this is where the addiction to doing comes into play. We have to understand that there is an intersectionality of human with a profession. Whatever role that you want to engage in, I wanted to be a minister. I thought the only thing that I can walk away with from this school is to become a youth minister, because my passion I want other kids that grew up like me to not have to suffer the way I suffered. I want other kids that have juveniles that have gone are feeling the same way I'm feeling, to have an outlet, to have a safe space to be, to exist, to explore who they are without having to feel oppressed, judged, or belittled. And so I knew that if this was the only way I was going to able to achieve it, was to become a youth minister, but I had to sacrifice who I was. Because
let me ask you, what was your belief around sexuality going through this?
Honestly, I believe in my core that this is the way I was made. There's a reason, and that's been affirmed. And let me reiterate: I believe in a higher power, but my God, my higher power, is not the God that I was raised to believe is out there. It's not a gotcha God. It's not a gotcha God. I grew up with a gotcha God. Like I'm a man in the cloud with a lightning bolt, and I'm waiting for you to mess up to just strike you.
Smart,
yeah, exactly. I grew up with that gotcha God. And for me, that fear-based control that was oppressive really, like I said, I really downloaded that. And I didn't want that.
The shame that comes with that.
The shame and guilt. I'm going to shame and guilt you into submission. I'm going to shame and guilt you and to fear, to listen to me, to comply, to fit the template, to fit the mold. And I witnessed in seminary somebody come out and express his feeling towards somebody, and in both seminary and in my church organization, and I realized the shaming, the belittling, the exposure of the sin, and how they tore these individuals up. I witnessed it firsthand, how they went totally against biblical norms in terms, and how they exposed them and belittled them and just ridiculed them and the family. And I was like, this is in my core, this does not align. This does not align with the teachings that you guys have taught us. And so for me, I wanted to be that resource, that safe space for these individuals who believe in a higher power, that believe in soul, in their soulful calling, in their soulful existence, to not have to oppress themselves, deny themselves, or kill themselves because of not fitting the mold. And so that desire, that passion is what got me into this work. Seeing so many people oppressed, seeing so many people go into addiction, seeing so many people attempt suicide really spoke to my heart in essence. And this is the reason why I do what I do. I tried to, well, if I'm not going to be minister, I'm going to go to criminal justice. Yeah, I went to criminal justice for 10 years and I was like, come back. The calling was still there.
As a probation officer.
Yeah.
So here's the link here. And this is why I wanted for you to share your story. I mean, there are many threads that can be pulled here, but the one that stood out the most to me was this Gandalf, this Obi-Wan figure in your life that honored your humanity.
Correct.
And how that relates to being a probation officer, how that relates to your depth psychology, and then how it relates to your work with the Life Recovery Center, because it's so often that those with addiction, and I have made these exact same judgments, is that those with addiction, there is something wrong with them, that they are then defined by the addiction, which is so. Okay, let's get into this.
Yeah.
How did you find work? Like, what was the calling to bring you into this line of work?
Well, when I I graduated. I graduated from seminary.
Sure.
I became the youth director of Southern California and Arizona, and then I was offered a church, and so I started pastoring in Moreno Valley. It probably had 7-8 members, elderly. And I started saying, you know what, I'm going to work with youth. I'm going to do outreach to youth. And I started doing outreach to youth. A lot of youth leaders who respected me and knew my love and passion started coming to my church from Los Angeles to Moreno Valley, Riverside County. They were driving once a week to work with me, to collaborate, because they believed in my vision. They believed in my calling. And so they would drive once a week and spend the whole day Sunday to work with teenagers in the neighborhood, to work with at-risk youth, to work with kids who was low, poverty-stricken kids, minorities. That's always been my passion, because I'm an immigrant Latino. And so I want to work with my community as well. But I mean, I won't discriminate, and so we would do services in Spanish, but I said, let's translate. And so we would have translators. And so we would make it a bilingual service. And so we would have children's church in Spanish and translate it to English. We would have, and so everybody was getting their needs met. Bring in the kids, bring in the youth, bring in the family. The church started off with 7, and I left it with a good 275, 300 members. Wow. And I did it. I pastored it. I was authentic and genuine in everything I showed up, and I followed the template, but I brought human and soul to. I brought a lot of archetypal. At that time, I did not know. I love parables. I love mythopoetic. I love the analogies, the metaphors that are found in the Bible, and I would bring those and connect them to lectures, truths I use a lot of archetypal psychology within my sermons and my preachings and my teachings, which really connected people to the human aspect. So it was not religion, it was more humanistic. And so this is what got the individuals from different levels. And I started realizing I'm getting a lot of people in addiction. I started realizing a lot of people who were wounded, a lot of sexual abuse, a lot of child abuse, a lot of neglect. They were hungry for a message of hope. They were hungry to hear, I'm okay. Something's not wrong with me. And so I started realizing there's a lot of trauma here. And I started doing a lot of research, and I was promised a scholarship to go get a degree in counseling from the organization. They never pulled through. They never followed through. At that point, I was like, this is my time to get out. And so I was looking at different schools, Montclair State University in New Jersey, Arizona State University, and then Metro State University in Denver. I did my shopping, and Metro State University offered me a scholarship through Kaiser Permanente and the Human Services Department. And in my mind, I was like, you know what? I'm going to help kids who are delinquent. My mind went to criminal justice. Again, going back to ego, I'm going to make my family proud. If I can't be a minister, I'm going to be a probation officer. I'm going to work in law enforcement. Yeah, put on the cape, and I'm going to rescue these kids.
Yeah.
And when I came to Denver, I got the scholarship. I took a minor in human services. I heard of human services, and I was like, human services? What's this about? Then I got it. Counseling, at-risk youth, trauma, domestic violence, and assistance serving youth. And I was like, this is my jam. This is it. This is it. And I took the first class, Intro to Human Services, and then there was Robin Watson. Robin Watson was my professor, and she's like, you know what? You need to go to counseling. You are a perfect fit for this field, but you need to go to counseling. And I was so upset and offended. I was like, you don't even know me. Who the hell do you think you are to call me out? But she was so connected. Again, another depth psychologist, union professor. And she's like, no, she goes, you have a lot of soul. And this is the key piece that she gave to me, the gift. You can only take your clients as far as you've gone.
Mm-hmm.
You can only take your clients as far as you've gone. In any capacity, if you're going to be a probation officer, if you're going to be a therapist, how are you going to hold space for someone who's been wounded if you have not healed your own wounds? You are not competent, able, mentally, emotionally to hold space for them because you're still wounded. You can't take your clients further because you're stuck. And I remember I was sitting there, I was like, oh, yeah, okay, but I don't care. My ego just kicked in, defense mechanisms, like, you don't know me, you don't see me. And she goes, I see you, and I see you're going to be amazing, but you need to heal your pain, heal your wounds. I'm like, you don't know me. She's like, you're right, I don't know you, but I see it. Yeah. And so I went to counseling, and that's when I went to my counseling. I started therapy in 2003, and I've never stopped. I loved it. It's became my oil change. And so then that's when I changed. I went to criminal justice first and minor in human services. And then I changed my degree to major in human services and minor in criminal justice. I realized that I want to be a criminal justice officer, but I want to do it from a soulful, therapeutic place to help those individuals who were hurt, traumatized, facilitate a space where I can foster a place of healing for them. And I adopted the term of Dr. Gabor Mate, what hurts so much that needs to be numbed? What hurts so much inside of you within, when you look at, I use the acronym of PERMS, physical, emotional, relational, mental, and spiritual. Within your 5 domains, PERMS, what hurts so much that needs to be numbed, that which requires you to numb it with alcohol, with drugs, with porn, with work, with, what hurts so much within those 5 domains that needs to be numbed. And so when I understood that, I was like, this is why addiction exists. There's a wounding there. The Greek definition of trauma is wound.
Wow.
And so that's how I destigmatized trauma diagnosis with my clients. It's like, I use the Greek definition. I share that. What's the Greek definition of wound? Look it up. Google it. And they're like, oh, it's wound. Okay, let's talk about your wounds in your 5 domains. And so that's how I was like, okay, here it is. I've been wounded in the way I think about myself. I've been wounded in the way I feel about myself. I've been wounded in the way I relate to myself. My relationship with myself was wounded because of oppression, because of abuse, because of sexual abuse, because of neglect. I don't believe in me. I doubt myself. And because of that, I can't have a healthy relationship with others. You know, the relational piece is there's two perspectives. First, intrapersonal, the relationship that I have with Alex, and then the relationship that I have with you, Brandon. That's going to be impacted if with the relationship that I have with myself. If I'm attached with insecurity, with lack of confidence and competence, I'm going to constantly be comparing myself to you. I'm going to constantly be angry, envious. There's going to be constant comparison, that one up, one down, because I'm not going to see myself equitable to you because of my insecurities in the relationship that I have with myself based on my wounding.
So this depth psychologist was on the money, and just quick opportunity just to kind of take a breath with all that. It's so interesting recently. I don't know if this is my unconscious influence or not with how I've been leading these interviews, but I've had Doug Gillette on multiple times. We're doing a series on the archetypes, which is either, who knows, may have been released before this episode. So for those of you listening or after. And I just had a guy named Rabbi Rocher on as well, kind of using that religious context. And it all comes back to doing the work.
Yes.
So Victor Pagan.
Yes.
Had done many, many heroes' journeys.
Yes.
Which gave him the ability to honor his humanity. That's why his lesson of honoring your humanity stuck.
Yes.
Because I can theoretically, explain up and down a topic, but if I haven't done the work and integrated it, it won't land. For you to achieve this mission, you knew from a young age you wanted to work with youth. That part was clear. And oftentimes when you have that clarity, the how figures itself out, but it wasn't materializing in the way that it sounds like your mind had, I will go through seminary. I'm going to get this scholarship. I'm going to start working with youth. And what do you know? A guide turns up and goes, how cute. How cute, Alex. You want to help kids. Well, here's your first, here's the next challenge for you to be able to achieve this, to be able to enact this vision.
If you're enjoying the Mankind Podcast, how about taking another step? Now, this one takes some courage. And you have it. Come check out the Men's Work Introduction. It's 3 sessions over 3 weeks. New sessions start every month where you can join other men on the path. Go to bit.ly/menswork1.
Yep.
It comes back to doing the work.
Correct.
And so I want to ask you, at this stage, had you come out?
At this stage, I had come out. I came out. When I came out, I turned over my church. I turned over my credentials. And I turned everything in.
Just out of curiosity, how did your congregation respond to that? Was it shock and awe? Was it?
No, I had prepared my congregation with a co-pastor. I told the co-pastor everything that was going on. I told the co-pastor everything that was, I had prepared him to let him know, you're going to take over. I'm going to step away. I had let him know I'm feeling called to do something bigger and better. I feel like my job came to plant this church, help plant the seed. You're going to water it and you're going to see it bloom. I'm done. I need to step away. And so because I did that, my co-pastor, the co-pastor really did take over. He prepared himself. And so they did a ceremony. I've asked, one of the ceremonies that I really appreciated was the church did a surprise in the Christian church. There's a tradition of washing of the feet, where and so what my co-pastor did, I had prayed for my higher power to give me a sign that it was time for me to go, that I was going to be okay. and all of the church leaders came to the church service and they sat me up front.
Wow.
The youth leader, the children's church pastor, women's ministry, youth ministry, they all had pitchers of water, and they all came and put pitchers of water, the deacons into the tub, and the co-pastor washed my feet. That was my sign. That was things aligning to let me know it's time for you to go. You got your blessing. Go.
And that for me to hear that just restores so much faith.
Yes.
It so restores so much faith in humanity, and to know that you were honored that way, I think
they did not know I had asked for, I had asked my higher power for a sign, and it came through them. And so I feel like the synchronicity of events happened. Does that make sense? Absolutely. I needed that to happen, and it happened.
Yeah, exactly.
Does that make sense?
Bingo. Some people call that stars aligning, right? It was, you were getting the signals you needed. Head, heart, soul, all of it was getting the green light, it sounds like. Now, for those listening, you probably came onto this episode going, well, addiction, right? We're 36 minutes into this interview. When are we going to get into the meat and potatoes of addiction? Well, I will tell you that we have just covered the broth.
Mm-hmm.
We've covered the broth, right? I mean, really getting to, what I love about your story, Alex, is it really disproves the belief that addiction is in itself a root cause. Correct. In fact, it is an extension of trauma, or the meaning that someone makes of the traumatic experience.
Exactly.
So I was in a men's circle I won't share the community out of confidentiality. I was in a men's circle, and there was a man who was new to the circle, and he checked in and he shared his experience of being molested. Mm-hmm. And the room, the energy dropped, the air got quite thick and solemn. And what men started to do, including myself, was say, "Oh my gosh, so sorry. Oh my God, that I can't, that must have been this. That must have made this occur. That must be why you're here." And he said something. He stopped all of us. He goes, time out. Trauma, and this is his words, of course. So I'm not going to make this blanket statement. He goes, trauma is the meaning that I make of this experience. It's not the event for me. It's the meaning of the event. I'm curious of your thoughts around that, Alex.
That's the transmutation of soul. That's alchemy. That's alchemy. This is why I facilitate Alchemy Group. When you're able to transform something so horrific to something spiritual, meaningful, purposeful in your life, that's alchemy. Alchemy, transmutation of soul, where I was wounded in this arena of my heart, my essence was damaged, my perms was wounded, and I can sit with it, tend to it, be with it, cry with it, for it, in it, the swampland of the soul. Be in that moment and see how it transmutes me, in the sense that it doesn't shackle me, hold me down anymore, but it gives birth of new meaning. It goes from me being a caterpillar to a butterfly. That's the alchemy. Yeah. That I no longer am a victim, but now a survivor. And let me tell you about it. Let me share my restoration. Yeah. Let me connect with you on my healing, and because I can see your wounding and I can feel that pain, and I connect with our humanness. I can connect and sit with you.
My friend of mine back in Utah, I went through a very, very challenging breakup, and he could see where I was, and he said, "Brandon, what you're experiencing is a soul wound. Mm-hmm. It's deep. It is like it is cracked through your sternum, wide open. And he goes, guess what? This soul wound will be the fertile soil for which your greatest growth can come, if you so choose. Yes. And that, I think back to that all the time, because my fiance and I are engaged, and we have all this amazing stuff happening. And I look back to those conversations where I go, holy shit, I never considered 2.5 years later to be in this position because of that soul wound.
Yes.
Because of that experience. And now here's the thing. It's all well and good for me to say to anyone going through trauma, hey, this is going to work out great for you later. Don't worry. I can't wait for your TED Talk. I can't wait for your, what you're going to create. That's easy for me to say. But as you shared with your journey, no two journeys are the same, right? No two healing journey. And whatever timeline I've learned, whatever timeline you expect someone to get over, parentheses, get over it, double it, triple it. Right? How long will it take for these traumas to be addressed and for the meaning to be made of these experiences?
It's a continuous process. When we think about, one of the things I tell the men in the men's group, my men's alchemy group, is that, you go, because they told me, okay, Alex, if trauma, if the Greek definition of trauma is wound, how did you connect that with soul? And I was like, what's the Greek definition of psyche? Soul. If you look up the Greek definition of psyche, it's soul. So I said the psychologist is the study of soul, the study of mind and soul. That's where we make a lot of decisions. Psychiatrist is the study, research, and medication of soul, so that you can work and function at an equitable level. Psychoeducation is educating you on your soul, on how you think, how you function. Psychotherapy is soul making, tending to soul.
There you
tending
go.
To soul.
The fertile soil.
There it is.
It's tending to it.
Tending to it. And tending to soul has seasons. There's a season to clean it up. There's a season to prepare the soil. There's a season to plant the seed. There's seasons to water it. There's seasons to bear fruit. There's seasons to clean it up again. So this soul making, soul tending is an ongoing process. We're constantly reinventing. We're constantly planting. We're constantly cleaning. We're constantly trying to weed out, get rid of the gnats, trying to get the pests away. And worms are going to come in, snails are going to come in. And, your things that you want to, when you think about a garden, you're constantly tending, so that you can bear the fruit. That's what psychotherapy is.
I prefer that kind of metaphor or analogy. I get those two mixed up. But the climbing of the mountain, because, for the suggestion of there being a top and a peak, no, it's this ever, there are those seasons where you have to turn the soil. You can't grow anything. Right. You've got a whole season. That's got to sit there.
Exactly.
Right. To get the pH right. So there's, I love that. It, again, comes back to the continual work. And about the meat and potatoes. So I grew up with my dad and I are incredibly close. Of course, there were challenges, as in any parenting relationship. And my dad is a child of AA. So my grandmother went through horrendous alcoholism. And I'm sure you've heard the examples of the kids coming home at the age of 12 and mum's passed out in a puddle of vomit.
Right.
Not only does that kid have to do his homework and cook himself dinner, he's got to put mum in the shower. And that was dad, right? It was her picking him up in a nightgown, and it was completely see-through, right, from school with a cocktail in one hand. It was these experiences that, fortunately, she was 36 years sober before, in the end, which was, amazing. Like, it was so grateful that she went through that experience. And dad learned so much from AA, to identify the childhood traumas he experienced of living with addiction. I want to ask you, addiction can come in many forms, right? It's not just alcohol, it's not just drugs, it's not just porn, it's work, it could be all sorts of things. What are the first signs or symptoms that you, anyone else listening, can identify both within themselves or with others around them that addiction may be at play?
I think when you start realizing they're losing their sense of self. Who I see, who I know, their energy, prior to the, let's say, the traumatic event, you've changed. Something's off. Something's not aligned. Something's not congruent. Something's not the same in our interaction, in the way you talk, in the way you being present in the here and now. You're not present. Something's
not grounded in many ways.
Yeah, exactly. It's not grounded. You're dysregulated. You're not showing up the way you used to show up. That should let people know there's a wounding there. There's a trauma there. And I see this a lot with kids. When as I work with kids, there's been a specific kid that I worked with a couple of years ago that he came in, and when he came in, he first came in because of struggling with depression, and when he came in one of those sessions, I realized there's a total change. And I was like, something happened. And in my counseling space, I'm very mindful of fidgety, especially with kids. When anxiety comes up, they get very fidgety. So I have slinkies. I have a man in a stick figure so that they can just grab it and just, sit with it and be with it. And as he's sitting there, he had got the slinky, and he started getting the slinky and just moving it from one hand to another and then moving it back and forth. And I said, if the slinky can speak for you, if I was to give a microphone to the slinky, what would it say about you? And he said, I'm anxious, I'm nervous, I'm scared. Anxious, nervous, and scared. Those three emotions together can be very painful. Those three emotions together, so I personify emotion. Those three emotions are showing up right here with you right now through the slinky. Yeah. He's like, yeah, I feel it. Yeah. Where do you feel it? My mind and my heart. All right. And what led to that event? What led to that emotion? When did that show up? See, what you do is you, number one, create that safe space. Two, identify what emotions connect to it without shaming, belittling. And three, connect the event.
Yeah.
What happened?
Good. It's very Gestalt.
Yeah. What happened? I don't know. Well, let's figure it out. When did it happen?
And holding that space I've witnessed and myself facilitated hundreds of men as adults doing that work. And in the Mankind Project, we have these processes and these, we call it guts. We do it in our groups. We do it on our weekends, where there is that linking of, when did you first feel this? What belief did you adopt about yourself when this occurred? About yourself and about the person that it's related to, or the environment or the situation. And when it comes to sexual trauma, that's when we that's not something that we'll necessarily dive into, but we will have leaders come in and facilitate perhaps a different process.
Right.
But with children, with these very plastic minds and psyches, and how just how, and I'm sorry, you were getting there probably before I jumped in.
So we have to understand, when someone suffers trauma, the amygdala, the part of the brain that stores, I call it the black box, expands, and it records all our five senses: what I see, what I hear, what I taste, what I smell. It records, and our frontal cortex shrinks. So my ability to think critically, to speak critically, is not active because of fight, flight, or freeze. And so I'm just reacting in survival mode. The only thing that I'm reacting to is my five senses. So when you are asking a child, a teenager, to verbalize, to use their frontal cortex to describe, they're not able to, because in that moment, they're stuck in their trauma response. However, when I use the term build the bridge, when you build the bridge in their senses, what did you smell? What was the emotion? What did you see? What color? I'm noticing as you're talking about this event, you're engaged in this activity, you're able, you're fidgety. Give the microphone to that somatic feeling. Give the microphone to that space in your body and where you hold it. The intervention that I came back with is the mirror. Looking yourself in the mirror and look at yourself, where do you hold that charge? And they're able to connect it with their senses. That builds the bridge for them to make that connection and say, here it is. This is when it happened. And they're able to connect somatically. They're able to connect in the moment to the wounding in a safe space that's not judgmental, and process. It's sacred space, Brandon. It's sacred space. For me, it's sacred space to hold that soul tending, that soul making sacred space.
Man, that process.
Yeah.
And it's so, that gets me so emotional. Because I think about how we're just doing it so wrong. How we're addressing trauma so wrong in the world with our kids, with our partners, with our adults. I mean, there are times where I can be in dispute or challenges with Christine, and the narrative in my head is just like fucking crazy. Like, it's like, you must see the sky as green and grass as blue, and it just takes me away. That's what Victor Pagan said. That honoring of the humanity.
Yes.
And that makes me emotional because twofold: how I don't honor my humanity when I'm going through challenges, and how I don't honor the humanity of others.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, our modus operandi right now when it comes to addressing people having challenges is we try and fix them. Right. We try and highlight all of the external factors and reasons and everything they've done that makes them wrong. And then we try and give them a mold to fit into, to be right. And that is so fucked up.
Yes. You minimize their human experience and their essence by telling them you need to fit this mold. This is the reason why I had to leave probation. In order for you to be successful, you need to fit this mold. Don't get me wrong. The intent was good. The impact was wrong.
Sure.
And I was like, no, I can't. See, sobriety is not, there's the sobriety. I can give you what you want. I can be sober for a month to terminate successfully. But when that month is over and I'm off paper, I'm going to go back. I'm going to default back to my old behavior. So in all reality, you did nothing but just modified my behavior for a time frame. It was a Band-Aid. That was not the intention. But how that's the impact.
And there are people close to me and Christine that are in the depths of addiction and really just trying to crawl on their hands and knees out of the hole. And I feel it within myself. And I know this is how it's being addressed by others around us, where I'm just like, fuck, I just want to remove all of the external stimuli and the environment and the nurture that is keeping them in this place. But that's so incredibly controlling. To be like, all right, let's get you out of that, away from them, stop doing this and start doing this. And it keeps coming back to me. It's like, yeah, cool. How long is that going to last?
Right.
Because the work has to be done. There are needs that are not met. There is a little boy or a little girl in there that is not fulfilled, is not being communicated to, and they're steering the bus right now.
Right. Well, and this is why when I talk about trauma tending to soul, we have to look at the AAA threat. That's something I use and I teach. The AAA threat. The AAA threat is, number one, are their services accessible to them? Do they live so far away that they do not have accessibility to the service?
Yeah.
Is it accessible to them in their language?
Yeah. Or general resources, right?
Exactly.
Do they live in a food desert?
Exactly. Yeah.
So
yeah.
Accessibility.
Is it accessibility? Number two, when they do find it, is there availability? Does Alex, does Life Recovery Center, does the therapist have availability for them? Do they have room? Especially right now, we're short, everybody's short-staffed and nobody wants to, everybody's full, short-staffed and wait lists. So you start looking, is it available? And then the third piece, and the most important one, are they amenable? Do they want to do the work?
Yeah, bingo.
Do they want to do the work? Because that's one of the biggest things. I can't tell you how many times I've told clients, okay, they told me, Alex, I don't want to do the work. You're too, one of my clients told me, you're too deep. I don't want to do an individual session with you because you're too deep and you corner us and you make us, you see things that, no, you're scary, man. I don't want to work with you. I don't want to do this. I was like, okay. I use this term of not yet. Not yet.
Not yet.
Not
never.
Yet.
Not yet.
Not never, but not yet. And I said, just know we're here. Life Recovery is here. Fast forward 2 years later.
On the amenable. Oh, sorry. Yeah. 2 years later.
2 years later, shows up, calls the office and is like, I need to speak to Alex. Just let him know it's so-and-so. Hey, Alex, this client named so-and-so is calling.
Bingo.
Yes.
The seed has sprouted.
Yes.
It was planted and now it is sprouted.
And as I'm sitting with this individual, he's like, you were right. I'm ready. I don't want to be ready, but I'm ready. Let's do this work. He goes, I'm going to cry, huh? I was like, what do you think? He goes, I want to cry right now. I want to cry right now. And I was like, because here's the thing, once you become aware, you can't go back to being ignorant. Once you become aware, you cannot go back. You can go into denial. You can choose to go into denial. But once you become aware of your wounding, you can't go back to being ignorant. Now that and he said, and I became aware of why I drink and why I use cocaine and why I use these different drugs. I'm aware now. And because I became aware, every time I would default back to substance use, I was like, oh, I'm like, you felt empowered. You felt empowered. Reframe. You felt empowered because you knew why you were doing that. Because you were trying, it hurt so much that you were trying to numb the pain.
He was coloring in the lines.
Exactly.
Yeah, you've just given him a new picture to color in.
Exactly.
Wow.
So I wanted to respect, you had a question about amenability.
Look, it was a distinction between willingness and wantingness, because I know many people are willing, but they don't want to. They don't want to. So does that apply as well?
Yeah, I've had clients come in like, listen, I want to do the work, but I'm going to do the work, but let me paint a boundary for you, Alex. I don't want to deal with my relationship of 10 years. Don't touch that. Yeah. Do not touch the breakup that I had 10 years ago. They come in with their, with their clear-cut boundaries of what they don't want to touch. I'm like, totally fine. And in my mind, it's like, and you will default back to that.
Yeah. That's going to be the lens in which
that's going to be the lens. Yes. And then sure enough, when we're doing the work, they go back. And I was like, hold on. I want to be respectful. You're talking about that situation that you don't want to talk about. No, I'm ready. I'm ready to get there's the amenability. I'm ready to do this and I want to do it. Okay, let's go.
It's their work. You let them get there. Exactly. You didn't push them there. They got there. Speaking of respect, I want to speak respectfully to time. I know you're a very busy person, and time away from the work that you're doing, there's opportunity cost there. there's two things I just want to kind of riff on quickly, and then we can say until next time.
Right.
So number one, I love this question. Alex, reach out your hand to the camera. I'm handing you a magic wand. Okay, you got it?
Got it.
Cool, you got the magic wand. All right, you get to wave this magic wand, and your vision for life recovery centers and your role in all of it gets enacted. What is that?
Eliminating all barriers to treatment for everyone.
Eliminating all barriers of treatment.
All barriers to treatment.
Yeah.
All barriers, financial, emotional. In person, we do telehealth. Yeah. We do Spanish. We do English, GLBT. You name it. That is our goal, to eliminate all barriers to treatment, mental health, and substance use. And, it's a challenge. But that's we're a for-profit and we're a nonprofit, and we became a nonprofit because I believe in this stream, and I believe that it can become, and at least in our area or any part of that is our goal of our Denver, our state, our Colorado. We want to be part of the solution and eliminate all barriers to treatment, mental and in substance use. And we're a dual diagnosed. We have a mental health designation and a substance use designation with the state of Colorado. And that is our goal. So our clinicians are trained to work with different populations, diverse populations, and be able to hold space, create soul, regardless of their wounding, regardless of their substance. Obviously, within the realms of our experience, if they need a higher level of care, we will do a soft handoff to that other level of care, but know that they can always step back. They can always come back. And they do. Once they go into inpatient, hey, I'm done. Can I come back? Come on back. We're ready for you.
Yeah, they know that, hey, look, it's like we had to pull the weeds in the soil. Now we get to plant. Now we get to grow the garden. This isn't an end. We don't end. We don't arrive. It's continue. Let's grow this thing from here. I love that you're providing that access and that path, mate. I believe that this time that we've spent together, I could plant many, many, many seeds in many minds of our listeners. And so I usually say this in the recorded outro. Those of you listening right now, I guarantee you that there are men, women, those who don't identify by any of those genders that have trauma, that are carrying trauma, that are carrying wounds, that have been abused sexually, mentally, emotionally, physically. You may not know who they are, but I promise you they are in your space.
Correct.
I believe. Well, no, let me ask you, Alex. My call to action would be to share this episode, but that may be too forward. Let me ask you, what is the call to action to those listening right now who are either dealing with their own forms of addiction or have those around them that are experiencing it?
There is in my TED Talk, I use this term of chicken check-in, which is, who's your soul tribe? Who is your soul tribe? So in other words, are you someone's soul tribe? Meaning, are you part of somebody's safety net where I have my soul tribe that I love, and I can show up as a professional and I can show up as a human and say, I have this term called V-text, a vulnerable text, and I put that on top. Hey, V-text, this is not me as a professional, this is me as a human. I'm struggling right now. Mentally and emotionally, I'm struggling right now, V-text. And then one of my friends, Liliana or Cara or Jen or Kevin, how can I support you? How can I show up for you? Yeah. When you think about what can you, who's your soul tribe? And
so you're advocating. You're either advocating for yourself or you're advocating for someone else.
Yes, correct.
Oh, mate, and that, to me, that those who get those V-texts will be the ones that will carry my casket.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yes. 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 Yeah. When I think about my soul tribe, when I think about Eric, Kevin, Yana, Cara, when I start thinking of all of my soul tribe, Yes, that's the perfect ones. Who do I want to carry my casket, speak at my funeral, who know me not only in the profession, but who knows my essence, my core, my soul.
They can cut through the bullshit when that mask is on.
Exactly. And call me out because I need to be called out.
Yeah, they hold you to a higher standard.
Yeah. Like, no, that's BS, Alex. That's BS. That's not you, and you know it. I needed that. Yes.
Mate, we did it.
Yes.
We did it. Look, my hope for this, all my hopes for this interview have just far exceeded what I was thinking would happen. And I know this is only the beginning of conversations between you and I. I've already made a list of people that I must introduce you to so you can be on their shows. Mate, thank you so much for this time. You've got a lot happening in your world. You're a very busy dude. I no-showed our first podcast interview because I was scheduling and I wasn't. And so the fact that you accepted my apology and joined me here it just says so much to you and your character and the man you are. And so gratitude to you and the work that you're doing. Now's your chance, mate. The microphone is yours. How can we find out more about you, your mission? How can we support? Take it away.
Well, first of all, Brandon, I want to thank you for being a lighthouse. That's the term I use, a lighthouse, and creating this gift to men and anyone who listens because this gives a message of hope. I've heard your other podcasts and you are a lighthouse, and I want to honor that gift, that essence and that passion that gave birth through your vision. And thank you for providing this safe space for individuals to come to process, to hear, to feed their soul. So thank you. So how could I not come back after I heard your podcast? I was like, no. That's human. We're all human. So yes, definitely. So thank you. And I would rock on and keep doing it because you're feeding your passion. And because you are feeding your passion, you're allowing others to be fed. So thank you for that.
Well, I think you just branded the show going forward. It's soul food.
Yes. Soul
minus
food,
the calories.
Yes. And how can they reach me? My baby, my passion, my love is Life Recovery Centers. If you look Life Recovery Centers, www.liferecoverycenters, one word, plural.net, you can definitely visit our site there. And if they need to get in touch with me, there's a way of getting in touch with me at Life Recovery Centers. And I also do consulting and training through my private practice of Transcending Consulting Group. So it's transcendingconsultinggroup.com. People can get in touch with me there as well. And like I said, invitations to trainings and invitations to, I do a lot of self-care facilitations with hospitals, judicial conferences, probation officers, with highway patrol, you name it. I do a lot of trainings on self-care and just soul tending. And that's my passion. Training, teaching, consulting has always been my passion because like I said, I love being able to gift to people what was gifted to me.
Pay it forward.
Yes.
Well, mate, for those of you listening, all these links will be in the show notes. You can find links to Alex there. Brother, this has been, mate, one of my best. I think this will go down as one of the best that we've done thus far. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for giving us access to your heart, your mind, your soul. And for those of you listening, I will continue to elucidate this point. This show is about you.
Yes.
It's through your attention and your support that you make this all possible. And so the fee for this episode is to share this with those you love and care about, those you believe that could benefit from this message, those that you believe could benefit from knowing Alex better and his work at Life Recovery Centers and the million other things that you've got going on as well. Gosh, you make me want to really remove the excuses from my to-do list that I don't. It just sits there and grows. But again, to you listeners out there, please just know that whether you're male, female, non-binary, however you identify, by doing the work, by looking in the mirror and being honest with yourself.
Yes.
And just build those, just brick by brick, that bridge of belief is going to get there. Just the more you do the work, trust me. And you may not know what the top of the mountain looks like, or the garden that you want to have, whatever metaphor and analogy you're framing your life's journey right now. The work is the answer. It is the answer. Any final comments, Alex?
No, just thank you. And I know this is not going to be our last time together. So I'm looking forward to many more opportunities to be able to connect with you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Until next time. Well, there you have it. Another powerful episode of the Mankind Podcast. Huge thanks goes to Alex Castro Croy for joining us today and sharing with us his insights from his immense experience. I mean, we're talking a true outlier here, one who has completed his 10,000 hours and is not stopping at all. If you believe that Alex's mission to help normalize the conversations around many of the challenges that those with addiction are facing, then the best way you can support him and that mission is to check out the links in the show notes. Head to Life Recovery Centers, right? Share this episode with those of your within your circle who may benefit from hearing this message, as well as I want to reach out to our greater Denver and Colorado members at the Mankind Project and listeners of this show, that if you know anyone in your circle that could use the support that Life Recovery Centers provides, be sure to send them that way, as well as be sure to reach out to Alex if you have openings in your I groups and your men's groups, so that we can create greater support, greater resources for those on their recovery journey. Alex has just completed as well his first TED Talk, which is very exciting. It's titled "Not My Chicken," talking about boundaries. It is just a delightful episode. TED Talk. I mean, if you've ever been to a TED conference, I can tell you right now, all you see on YouTube are the ones with 500,000 plus views. They're great. They're entertaining. Most TED Talks really do put you to sleep. This one, I can tell you, does not. He does a fantastic job, and be sure to check it out in the links in the show notes. All right, that's all for me. I hope you've enjoyed this episode this week as we have dove into some very deep and serious topics around addiction and trauma. What I want to encourage you to do, if this episode has been quite heavy, or it's something, there have been things that have landed on you that you may feel like you need to witness, do some work around, please take some time to honor that part of you that is telling you that there may be some work around this. Seek support. Find a men's group. Seek out those who have supported you in the past and those who want to be an ally to you on your growth and your healing journey. Do not go through this alone. Lots of love. See you next week. This has been another episode of the Mankind Podcast, produced in association with the Mankind Project USA. We have been your hosts, Paul Newell, Boyson Hodgson, and myself, Brandon Clift, and we want to thank our guests for joining us today and imparting their wisdom from their experiences in this amazing journey called life. If you want to find out more about today's guests and support them in their mission, you can find links to them in the show notes. Now, if you have found gold and insights that you believe could benefit your loved ones and those you care about, be sure to share it with them. And of course, we are always grateful for a rating and review of the show on iTunes. Now, we've got to give special thanks to our back-end team, producer, editor, and audio ninja for the show, Michael J. Russer, and Don Huff, who takes care of our graphics and promotions and pretty much makes us look pretty. So, of course, thank you, Don. Now, above all else, we've got to thank you, the listener, because through your attention and your support, you have made it possible for us to let men all over the world know that they are not alone and that there is more than one way to be a man. And if something in this episode has touched you, then perhaps it is the call to action to get involved in men's work. With live trainings happening constantly and in-person trainings happening all over the world, the Mankind Project definitely has something for you. Now, if you've enjoyed the music in this episode and all of our episodes, be sure to check out Jim Donovan and the Sun King Warriors. I have links to them in the show notes. And lastly, just know, what it means to me to be a man is completely different than what it means for you. What it means for Paul, what it means for Boyson, that is the beauty of this journey. So if you are looking for guidance, support, and community As you begin to unpack and dive deeper into your men's work journey, then you know where to find us. Same place, same time, next week. Lots of love. We'll see you then.